Welcome to the Hollywood Scholar. I'm Chad Morgan, and I just finished the House of the Dragon finale, The Black Queen. And I really just gotta say, is that it? I mean, this episode wasn't the worst of the season, and it wasn't the best by any stretch of the imagination. It was very mid, and I called it last week when I said that trailer made it look like this episode was gonna be action-packed, the actual Targaryen Civil War. Things were gonna get quick, things were gonna get action-packed. And I predicted that was all marketing, that actually wasn't going to be the case for this finale. I was proved 100% correct. And this episode, it was really long and drawn out. It didn't have the speed that was necessary for a finale to wrap up this season and get people excited about the next one, at least in my personal opinion. There were things that I definitely liked about it, some good characters, lots of good dialogue. There was a lot of good dialogue in this episode. But the biggest issues kind of hurt it quite a bit. But before we get any further, there will be spoilers ahead, so spoiler alert. This episode sees Rhaenys reaching Dragonstone and telling Rhaenyra about the death of her father, King Viserys, and the rest of the episode is all about the backlash to that. Rhaenyra trying to get her allies together, trying to get through childbirth, and she ends up actually having a stillbirth. And then when she sends her sons out for the very vital allies that are still left undecided, one of her sons is killed by Aemond, and that's kind of how the episode ends. Yeah, that was it. A lot of allies conversating. Now, a lot of those conversations were great. I did enjoy a lot of the dialogue, but it wasn't enough to really sell the season, to put a bow on it. There wasn't really any action besides one scene, which I do love. Love that scene, but we'll get into that. Talking about the negatives, the biggest negative is they don't justify Rhaenys' mass murder. I mean, they say, oh, it's not my war to start. She started it when she murdered hundreds and hundreds of King's Landing citizens. There's still not an explanation. That was one theory that people had. Oh, she didn't kill the Greens because it's not her war to fight. Still killed a bunch of civilians, though. That kind of justifies a war getting started. Yeah, pretty bad. But they don't explain it, so that scene is just as broken as we all felt it was when we initially saw it. So this episode is hurt because they don't fix the brokenness of the last episode. So that brings this one down quite a bit. And the other major negative, I felt like the burst scene was too much. Like, I've never felt squeamish watching something before, but the burst scene went a little too far in certain instances, like the giant cascades of blood just pouring out to the actual baby that was stillborn, that was deformed, that was very early on. It was graphic for my taste, and I have a really high standard for that type of stuff. I don't really care about a lot of that. It was a bit much. It was a bit much. And the end, I didn't feel like it was a natural place to end the series. I feel like the end of the last episode actually would have been a much better place to end it. If, the Rhaenys scene had been explained properly, it would have been a much better place to end it with Aegon on the throne, what's going to happen next. But this episode felt like it should have been the premiere of season 2, just kind of getting people back into the groove, seeing where people left off. It did not feel like a season finale in any way. And when it actually ended, we still don't know anything about the Starks, what they're going to say. We still don't know anything about the Vale, what they're going to say. A lot of it was just unnecessary or stuff that should have been included in season 2. So I really didn't like how it ended. Those are pretty big negatives in my opinion, but there were several positives that I want to get into. Again, the dialogue was really great, specifically with Daemon. He had several great conversations, like his speech he gave the King's Guard, scaring them. He's like, if you're going to swear to Rhaenyra, we'll be great. We'll be chill. If you say, hey, I want to support the Greens, I'll give you a quick, honorable death. But if you swear to Rhaenyra and then turn your cloaks later, I'm going to make you suffer for it. He did a great job selling that scene. I really enjoyed how he did that. And then he had another scene where he was choking out Rhaenyra, and he just had this intensity in his eyes. It doesn't necessarily match with how this character's been established recently, that he would attack Rhaenyra. It doesn't feel like that's something he would do. But Matt Smith sold it so beautifully, and that look in his eyes was just brilliant. I love Matt Smith. He made this season for me. He made it worth watching. And initially, I really enjoyed this season as a whole, but it kind of dove off a cliff in a few different instances. He's the only reason that I kept going. And another one of his great scenes is when he was singing to one of the dragons, I think one of the wild dragons he's trying to tame for the war. He's just singing, talking to the dragon. It's a really cool moment, and there's a really visually stunning image of the dragon breathing fire above his head and him just looking up at it. That was a sci-fi image. I was like, oh, that's beautiful. I love that. So all my favorite stuff of this episode was surrounding Damon, and all my close to favorite parts of the episode were about Aemond. They're very similar characters, the younger and the older versions of the same people, and so it's kind of why I like both of them. And this Aemond actor, he's quickly gotten into my good graces. I really like the younger actor. I was really worried about the older one taking over for him. This older one has done it. His chin is just very very regal and compelling, and he didn't actually have to say anything for the initial part of his early scene where he's at Storm's End listening to Rhaenyra's son trying to get the Lord of Storm's End onto her side. He's just standing there watching his nephew, and he just the look in his eyes. Aemond is very, very good at performing without actually saying anything, and then he gets angry, threatens to take the boy's eye out, and we see the sapphire in his eyes, and I think that actually looked really well. I really enjoyed that. But the next sequence, I don't think fit with his character. Yes, he's strong-willed, he's a bit of a rogue, but he's extremely loyal and well thought out and very intelligent. I think he would have been able to predict that going after Rhaenyra's son, after that interaction on Storm's End, was a bad idea. Even if it was just to mess around with him, that's something that Aegon would have done. I don't see that as being something that's been established for Aemond. I loved the dragon fight, though, that they had between them. A lot of cool stuff in the rain, and a lot of brilliant images, specifically when they get above the clouds and they're just looking out at the storm below them. It's a really beautiful image, and I was surprised that Vhagar just chomped the shit out of the prince and his little baby dragon. Oh, that was an interesting moment, and Aemon kind of had to look like, I fucked up. It seems very contradictory to his character that he would even have put himself in that situation, but he reacted to it in a way that was interesting. So I really liked the scene. Its cool factor was really high. It wasn't justified well enough for me to call it a good scene and interaction. But overall, that's kind of where my thoughts on this episode ends. It was very meh, kind of like most of this season was. Overall, that's kind of been the emotion that I've taken away from it. Apathy. I've had some really high highs and some really low lows when it came to House of the Dragon Season 1. Ultimately, it's how you end, not how you start, and this wasn't a great ending for me. It was just, oh, I guess it's over now. Very Dune-like. It's like, did you really need to end it here? Is this where you decided to end it? Okay, sure. That's what you want to do. Okay. And it just wasn't anything compelling. I don't know if I'll check out season 2 at this point. I really don't care enough to predict if I'm going to wait these 2 years with any sort of anticipation for a coming season. I love Daemon and Aemond, but I don't know if they're enough to keep me going in this series. It's not hatred. It's not anger. It's just, it was fine. It was fine. I enjoyed myself a couple times. And so we'll kind of have to see where I'm at when season 2 eventually comes out. But I'd have to give this episode another 6 out of 10. I feel like that's pretty fair for this episode and the stuff that it delivered to us, because there were some beautiful shots, some good dialogue writing. The plot, though, wasn't exactly up to par with what should have been for a finale like this. But anyway, that's all I have for today. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Anon. If you like what I do here and want to see good, compelling stories that Hollywood will no longer give you, check out my book series, Odyssey of a Phoenix, a mythological epic about philosophy, morality, and modern-day mental illness issues. Books 1, Down in Flames, and Book 2, Apocalypse Then, currently on sale. Book 3, Kill the Dark, coming soon.